piano time.
Welcome back to the Enjoy the Walk podcast, guys. As always, joined here by my fellow friends, Isaiah and Dante. Guys, how are we doing again this week?
Doing well, man. How about you, Dante? Good to see you. Dalton, good to see you.
I'm here.
It's just another day. We're counting down so the East Coast can bring us some steady, warm weather, right?
Please.
Couple more weeks.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. No, so guys, we have a pretty special guest with us this week. For those of you that might, be running your own business or checking out the entrepreneurial space, you might know this guy. Pretty good friends with a little known name, Gary V. You might have heard of him, you might not have, but partners in business with him out at Empathy Wines and has worked with him in the past for well over a decade, I would say.
Yep.
And it's just an absolute guru when it comes to the game of golf and self-proclaimed gearhead, as we've heard. So,
some days a guru.
Some days a guru, some days, still some room to be learned. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nathan Scherotter. Appreciate you joining us, man.
Yeah, a pleasure to be on, and thanks for having me. Quick little background on me, just to get that out of the way. As you said, I've worked with Gary Vaynerchuk for about 10 years now in different capacities. I'm probably a different type of guest than y'all usually have, not so golf focused from a career perspective, but definitely from a passion perspective. So I worked with Gary in the wine business 9 years ago. As his career shifted more into the digital advertising world, my career kind of shifted with him. I started as Gary's executive assistant for 2 years, and then I ran one of his book launches, which was Jab, 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 Right Hook. I was the CEO of Jab, 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 Right Hook, which I was probably the first and only CEO of a book. And he said, "I'm going to call you CEO because that's how I want you to think. Do you get it?" And I'm like, "Yep, I got it."
Did it work?
We sold a shit ton of books, so it was a really good experience. Never thought I would work on like the publishing, book selling space, but definitely something that was interesting. And then transitioned to the agency. I ran operations or helped run operations at VaynerMedia for about 5 years until I became a chief of staff to Gary again, and kind of just executing any and everything across a 600-person digital advertising agency that had offices in LA and Chattanooga and England or London. And so about 2 years ago, kind of got the entrepreneurial itch. Gary knew that was kind of something that was always interesting for us. We helped so many Fortune 100 and 500 brands build their digital presence, build their social presence. We also saw a ton of up-and-coming startup companies take market share away from Fortune 100 and 500 companies via social media, direct-to-consumer, Facebook and Instagram paid media acquisition. And so me, Gary, and my partner in the wine business, John, said, we can do that in the wine space. No one's really building brand digitally in the wine space. And so we said, let's start a winery. How hard can it be? So we launched Empathy Wines. We announced it about 13, 14 months ago. We've been selling or shipping wine for about the past 11 months now. And it's been a wild year. We make a rosé, white, and a red, all blends from out of California, $20 a bottle, shipped directly to your door. So that's kind of my quick little spiel, but really excited to talk about, golf, wine, digital media, social media, direct to consumer, and see where this goes.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you giving the folks, who might not have known you from our listenership, kind of the full background and understanding why or where you've come from to get to where you are now. But, something we always ask our listener or our guests as we get into kind of just the golf scene in general is when you first picked up a club and what got you into golf first, and then we'll get back into the business side of things.
Cool. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Arizona. I live in New York City now. Arizona is much easier to play golf on a year-round basis. But my dad played golf. Honestly, the first memory I have is he brought me out to this par 3 course. It was the first time I was kind of hitting the ball around. We were playing with 2 other, middle-aged or older people. And I remember I got yelled at on like the 3rd or 4th hole because I was holding the flag and like standing in someone's line. It's a very vivid memory for me. And it was like my first real round out on the golf course. The other times I was just kind of hitting it on the range. But for some reason, I kept playing after I got scolded at on the third green. But growing up in Arizona, it was very much a lot of my friends played. The Junior Golf Association of Arizona was a very strong organization, really good players there. I'm not the biggest individual, and so there wasn't too many sports I could play through high school. So golf was kind of what I landed into.
No, that's awesome. And we touched on it a little bit in some previous podcasts. Junior golf programs across the country are something that I think so many people maybe have like a stigma on. It's like, oh, I got to belong to a country club or do this or do that. And it's like, what we love to see, and what's I think happening in the game of golf now is there's so many things, whether it's, junior golf associations or first tee programs, or there's a lot more outreach than like when we were kids, say like 15, 20 years ago, then, that allow kids to get into some sort of junior golf. And I think a lot of people we've talked to that have a background that continue to play at 30s, 40s and beyond say, well, I started when I was a kid at some point, I started when I was a junior and continued to play.
Right. I think the thing that I liked the most was definitely the competition at an early age. I think playing competitive golf for many, many years, it doesn't make it easier down the road, but just to have those juices at such an early age. I think a lot of people that pick up the game later in life, it's a lot harder for them when they get into like either a scramble tournament or a member guest. They really hype themselves up quite a bit, or not hype themselves up, but they get super hyped up about it. So it's funny, I started playing competitive golf, I think when I was 8. And so now like going to like a member guest, I'm like, this is fine. Like, it's just super fun. It's not like a stressful thing for me. So I would encourage juniors to play competitive golf at an early age, but at the same time, you can't take it so serious when you're 8 to 13 and get burnt out.
Yeah, I know Isaiah can comment that a little bit too. It's like we've both played a lot of junior golf growing up, and there's a fine balance. We would grind all day out on the golf course and then get to a point and say, you know what? I think I have the fishing rods back in my trunk. You want to just end out the day and just go fishing? It's just like there needs to be some lightheartedness when you're at that age, because it's really not a serious. At the end of the day, it's a game, and it's supposed to be fun. You see so many kids, whether it's golf or any sport, going so hard so early and getting so pressured that by that high school age or even a little later in college, it's just they get out of college and want nothing to do with the sport.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's self-awareness too. I think people try and, when they're a freshman, sophomore, junior, and force themselves to, I'm going to play college golf. This is like my end all be all. If I don't do this, like everything's over. But a very few percentage of junior golfers play college golf, and so they psych themselves out and get super stressed out about things that might not be the right fit for them. So it was an incredible experience. I'm very glad I did it. I didn't play college golf. I was a little bit self-aware myself and said that, waking up at 6 a.m., 5 days a week to play golf and that being my entire life through college, wasn't going to be the right fit for me. And in hindsight, I mean, it is what it is. And I enjoy college very much, but I kind of miss those competitive juices, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's how Dante got into the game. Really, was kind of looking for competitive juices like that after college.
Yeah.
Like I said, Isaiah and I started young, but Dante had played a little bit, and I think had gotten into it just after college for that exact reason. So many people lose that competitive flair after college a little bit.
Definitely.
I didn't know what to do, and I was itching for something, and then kind of just banged up my knee in a box lacrosse league for men's, and knew I still had to go to work the next day, and that was the longest 8 hours of my life on a work standpoint. So the light bulb went off in my head and realized, well, you only need yourself to go out and play golf. Other sports you have to require really a team, which was so great about that. So I jumped on board on that and have been hooked ever since. But yeah, you gotta separate, the enjoyment and even the competitive. Like, you can still compete, but know to have fun.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, if you're in my situation and you're getting into it on a more competitive level later on in life, try and get it into a competitive environment sooner than later, because I did a member guest with my buddy, and that was literally the first tournament I ever was in, and I shit my pants. I was so nervous. So anybody out there, if you have a chance to play competitive golf, do it immediately. Don't be afraid. You're gonna be extremely nervous. You're not gonna do well. Get it out of the way so the next one that comes around, you're like, you know what? It's just another round of golf.
Yeah. Competitive golf is real. It's real golf too. I think it's very different when you're not giving yourself 4-footers every round.
The exact statement I was just going to make, that 4-footer, no matter what sport you've played, what environment you've been in, that 4-footer to win a match just hits differently than any other sport. It gets your hands shaking, you sweat a little more. I mean, it is a completely different environment when you got to stand over something to win a match.
Definitely.
It's a love for the game. I think that, like we all agree, the sooner you start it, the better. And then you can set yourself up for more events to play better down the road.
Yeah, and just as a side tangent, I think golf when I was in high school was definitely, it wasn't baseball, it wasn't football, it wasn't basketball, and so it wasn't frowned upon, but it's like, it wasn't.
You were the golfer.
Yeah, you were the golfer. It's like, oh, Nate the golfer. It's but a lot of those people that were like, I'm going to play basketball. A lot of my friends now play golf and love golf now. And so it's actually been a great way to reconnect and continue to build my friendships from back in the day, because they're all into golf now. To your point, they have to find competitive juices somewhere when we get old and, sprain our ankle and pull our hamstring every time we step on the basketball court. Something we got to find something else. So it's been a really great way to continue like friendships from years and years ago.
Yeah, and I think, in all of our professional settings as well, I see at least a lot on my end from like the architectural profession. We're always having golf outings. We're always having competitive, firm versus firm outings or whatever it may be. And like you're 25 to like 45 and beyond, most business folks get out on the golf course at some point during the year. And, there's more business talk, I feel like, on the golf course than, in actual meeting rooms a lot of the time.
You want to get the deal done on the golf course. You don't you want to wait. I don't want to get the deal done in the conference room. Like, let's wait and like share a nice old fashioned after the round and shake hands. It's a much more fun situation. I completely agree.
Yeah, anytime you can get outside of those confines and just get out and enjoy yourselves and like you said, have yourself a good drink, whatever it may be, there's always something to be said about that kind of connection and networking outside of the office that goes a long way. And I think golf's able to provide that a lot better than your 5v5 or basketball game and, on the court. That can get a little testy.
Definitely.
Something you said a little earlier, you started feeling a little bit of entrepreneurial juices, post kind of working for Gary for 8 or so years. And I'd love for you to maybe get into what you felt switched, or what, was there like a moment that you felt that there was, okay, I've done this, I've done the media side of things, but now I want to branch out on my own? Or was it kind of always something that was there and that was just kind of building a fire over year after year?
Well, before that, let me interrupt you for a second. Before you go into that, where did you meet Gary? Where did that connection take place? Have you known each other before you started with Empathy or with VaynerMedia? When did that take place?
Yeah, so I was an 18, 19-year-old kid that for some reason was interested in wine. I went to Europe after I graduated high school with my friend's family and drank some wine with them there and got super intrigued by just wine in general and wanted to learn a lot more about it. So I got home, I started Googling wine terms, and I came across this random dude that was doing a vlog called Wine Library TV and just got hooked. I was like, this guy's a character, but he explained wine in a real way and was very relatable. And he did, 1,000 episodes of Wine Library TV where he sat in front of a camera and reviewed wine 5 days a week. I probably found him around episode 300 or 400, watched it for a couple months. And I said, I want to work for this guy. Like, there's something about him. Like, he obviously knows what the internet even is. He knows how to communicate and tell stories. I didn't really put those things together at the time, but I was like, this guy's just very entertaining, and I want to work for this guy. So I literally sent him an email, never met him before, and said, "Dear Mr. Vaynerchuk, my name is Nathan Scherotter, and I like wine, and I taste a bunch of different, fruits and vegetables to help train my palate." It was very nerdy. And I was like, do you offer internships? I'd love to come out and work for you for free. Because I think he was just starting to kind of talk about business and internships. And I said, I'm in Arizona. I'll move to New Jersey for this summer and work for free, whatever you need. He responded, I have the email, but he responded, I think, yes, one word. And I'm like, what do I do with this? I think I have an internship, but I have no idea. But I saw he CC'd someone else on the email. So I followed up with him. I'm like, hey, I think Gary said I could have an internship. Let me know what next steps are. Coincidentally, his assistant at the time went to Arizona State, where I went to, or he was an alumni of Arizona State. So we had a nice chatter over some bars in the area, or restaurants. I wasn't of age at the time. And moved out to New Jersey that summer, interned at Wine Library for 3 months. One of the days I got to go with him into the city when he had to do some press, and we got to connect at a real level, at a human level. He liked me enough and brought me back for the next summer, where I worked at another one of his wine properties. And we just had a lot of, he tells a story, which I won't take up too much time with this, but he tells the story of, we did a retreat one summer where I was interning. When VaynerMedia just started, there was probably 10 people at the company. Corked, which was the wine social network that I was interning at, and a couple of his other side things. We all went on a retreat. There was 20 or 30 of us. We played volleyball for like 8 hours a day. Just nonstop volleyball. It's the sorest I've ever been in my life the next day. And he said on that trip, he knew that he wanted me to work for him forever, or work with him forever, because of my determination and intensity on the volleyball court, which I'm like, I think that's like, I'll take that. That's great. But I'm like, I'd like to think that there's a little bit more substance behind just the determination on a volleyball court.
Just the way you play volleyball?
Exactly. But he said in that moment, he knew that he wanted me to work with him for a long time, which was nice. And so, yeah, I think that I was a good intern, did good work and tried my best, and got there early and stayed late and just did whatever was asked of me, and in a competitive way, I guess. Which I think attracted him to me. So that's kind of the backstory of how I'm in this office right now.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah. So VaynerMedia, when I started working there, was a startup more or less. I was like employee 15 or 20 at the time. VaynerMedia had really crazy growth, still has crazy growth from, when I started there through the year 7 when I left. So every year kind of, for the most part, felt fresh and new, and there was a lot of new challenges and different things happening, different capabilities building that we had to build within the walls, different teams that we had to structure. It was like controlled chaos, which is kind of what entrepreneurship is in general. But we got to a place where, I think probably around the time there was around 500 people or so. It kind of crept into my mind that we needed to hire people that have built multinational agencies that were 1,000, 2,000 people. I've never built an agency before. I think I did a good job help running the operations of the business and getting it to a place where I could get it, but I couldn't take it from 800 to 2,000 and 2,000 to 4,000 and 80 million in revenue to, whatever, 500, a billion, whatever happens in the future. So, a little bit self-aware of this wasn't my background. I didn't want to be an agency person forever. It got to a place where we just needed to hire people that have done it before. And it was just kind of, it ran its course, and it was time to start something new.
And that's enter Empathy Wines.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a whole it was completely different switch from being in an 800 person agency with benefits and, payroll and the things that you come to just take for granted sometimes when you're in not a corporate environment, but an established company, to, it was me and my partner, John, for a few months, and then we hired our first employee, and then our second, and our third, and our fourth, and going through compliance. And we're selling a regulated substance, alcohol, across state lines, which is very difficult. Government does not make it easy to do that. So there's a big learning curve for sure. We've made a lot of, I don't want to call them mistakes over the year, but it's been a lot of learning moments over the year for sure. But I think for our business and any business these days, we're just solely consumer centric. That's kind of, we filter everything through the lens of being consumer centric and customer first. So the wines and the style of wine that we make, how we deliver it to you, the packaging that it's delivered in, the stories that we're telling, cutting out the middlemen to get you a better wine for the price. Everything's customer centric. I think that's where the world is going. Amazon might not be a customer centric, business at large. Actually, it probably is. They get you their product the next day. It's cheap prices.
I was going to say, rudimentarily, it resembles that. I mean, the way you use it, if you have an app on your phone and you go to order a pair of socks, it's in your mailbox the next day.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. They probably. I take it back. They probably are only customer centric, which makes everything else. They may not be employee centric, but that's besides the point. They kind of change the culture of how people buy things. And so, and then Facebook and Instagram changed the way people tell stories. It was much easier for anyone to grab a camera or write a blog post and distribute a story and put it in front of people that cared about what you were saying. And so, with all those, we took all of those things and said, we applied it to the wine world where, there's different wine clubs that have popped up, Wink, Naked Wines, First Leaf, and some others, but no one was building a singular brand. We wanted to build a brand of a winery. We wanted to own the IP of that brand and not, slap labels onto bulk juice and be a marketing company. We wanted to be a winery first and build that brand via the tools that we know how to use.
I think that you mentioned it a little earlier. You're really starting to see that straight to consumer market come full force in the golf industry.
Yep.
I think, we've kind of seen it on our own end as we're looking to maybe, partner with some people to get product in, with our logo or, just in brand partnership. There's a lot of people that all right, well, you can only get it on our website. You can't go anywhere to get it or
right.
It's just via website to consumer. And I think it's becoming a really big part of every industry, not just your wines or your Amazons. It's really entering every market.
Definitely. And golf, I think, is particularly, I think it's rather difficult in golf. I think that you can tell the story in golf, but golf, I think, is like the ultimate influencer sport. And so you can tell a story, you can tell a better story than others. But in golf, for some reason, either equipment or clothing has to be validated by someone that you care about and someone that you want validation from. And there's beautiful club makers and machinists making amazing bespoke putters for you. And if you're deep into Instagram like me, you find them. But if you want to reach some sort of scale, for some reason, golf is still becoming the ultimate influencer sport, which is fascinating.
It is. And we see it all the time. When we kind of networked with a few really smaller, like you said, kind of niche machinists or guys making their own putters, guys making their own wedges and irons, whatever. One that stuck out to us was Ballistic Golf. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
They make some of the best looking irons that I have ever seen. I mean, they're pure, they're minimalistic, they're just what everything in a good player's iron should be. I don't think he even has anywhere close to 1,000 followers on Instagram, maybe even less.
It's wild, right?
And he's only doing custom orders, so he's just doing one set here, one set there. It's if Titleist came out with those irons tomorrow, they'd be the best thing on the market. They'd be in every player's hands. But it's and it goes back to building brand and being around the game for so long and getting, like you said, your product into the right player's hands, the right person's hands, the right influencer's hands. But I mean, it's little things like that it's man, some of these little machine shops are doing some jaw-dropping work,
beautiful
not
work,
being recognized.
Yeah, I definitely think in golf too, there's, from my perspective, has been a big push, and I think the right push into getting fit. Um, I think that buying off the rack is going to become a thing of the past sooner than later. But if you go fit, you go to True Spec Golf or Club Champion, or I guess even at some level like PGA Superstore or whatever. Like all these bespoke companies that are making beautiful equipment will never get in those places. There's just too many of them, and they'll never fit you into that. So, do you all follow the Country Club collection?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I met him, and he went down to Artisan Golf. And did like a whole day there, and he was doing a really great job capturing content of like that whole experience, which was, that from an Artisan Golf perspective, he does have a few pros I know using his clubs and wedges, but even validation from media, like golf media properties, of being like, this is an experience, this is what this actually looks like, this is what these actually feel like. It's storytelling, and it's storytelling and distribution. It's what marketing has been since the beginning of marketing. It's much easier to do, but you have to know how you want to do it.
I was gonna say, is it almost more fast paced in a sense? Like before we had like radio ads and your sometime TV ads and like maybe newspaper ads, I don't know, like going way back, but like now that it's just at our fingertips, is it just to a point where it's so fast paced that is it getting tougher for smaller brands to get out there, or is it almost like they have the opportunity to get out there more now that it's in our thumbs? Like, is it almost like a 50-50?
It's both. It's fast paced. And so people that do it, think that they're going to do this one thing and that's going to change their business, but it's a forever thing. Like if you want to continue to build a brand, like you do this one thing and then you replicate it again and again, and then you test this messaging versus this messaging, and then you push it again and again and again. And so, for the Artisan Golf example, I'm sure it was great for him. I'm sure he got a lot of clicks to his website, but what's next? To your point, it's fast paced. He could probably leverage some clips from that and use on his own social, but people are going to forget about it in a month unless you're weird like me.
We hit the save button too. We look back on all those.
Yeah. So it's definitely more fast paced, but to your point also, there's definitely more supply. Anyone can create this content now. Anyone can become a voice or an expert in the space if they have the talent to do so. And if like one guy that I talk with on Instagram is Bastion Mild. He's a putter maker. Makes really cool, really great machinist. And I was DMing with him because I went to his website. His website was garbage. And he knew it. And I'm like, hey, like I work for, direct to consumer, winery. I know a little bit about the direct to consumer and e-commerce space. Would love to like give you some tips. And he was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like I'm a machinist. Like all I know how to do is to build these putters. And so for him, and I don't know exactly for him, but I guess if you're starting one of these businesses, whether it's clubs or clothes, you have to kind of decide, is it a hobby? Is it something where I'm going to make, even 10 or 20 and make a few $1,000s a month and make beautiful things? Or is this going to become a real business for me? And if this is a business for me, what am I great at? And what do I need to bring on to help me scale this business? He's an amazing machinist. He can turn out beautiful putters, but he knows very little about e-commerce. I hope he doesn't listen to this. But I think he said so himself, but he doesn't know e-commerce or how to set up a site or how to, what content he should be producing to sell putters.
Well, I think there's a big step in humility that goes into that. Like once you can kind of sit back from it all for a minute and say, hey, I really am not good at this. Like if I want it to grow and if I really do have a passion to make it something that's going to last, I need to not have my hand in every little section of the pot and let someone who's a specialized, person in that field take control of it and knock it out of the park.
Yeah, definitely. To quote Gary Vee, I mean, it's humility, it's self-awareness, and then it's deciding if you want to jump into the world of really jump into the world of entrepreneurship, which is not the most glamorous world by any means. People have continued to ask me, they're like, oh, you run a winery. That must be so fun. And they always say it's so fun. Like, this must be so fun. And I'm like, I've always said, like, when we first started, I'm like, when the wine's finally in consumers' hands, it'll get fun. Wine got to consumers' hands, every day was still a headache. I'm not complaining by any means. And I'm like, okay, once we redesign our website and the website's like working how we want it to work, it'll be fun. Things will be easy. That's never the case. Like, every single day, from my experience, in entrepreneurship is difficult. I think in the world of non-entrepreneurship, sometimes your jobs can be stressful and hard in their own way. But this is like, I need to make 30 orders today.
Yeah, you're not driving the ship when you're a number 5
Right.
and number 6 or whatever. There's
Right.
there's some kind of tier of responsibility that just doesn't fall on you.
And for me too, it's a sense of pride, and people don't want to fail. And when you go out on your own, you're like, if you fail, people are going to know that. And so it's definitely, I had a conversation with Gary once, and he's like, because he's like, I wonder if I'm going to get caught with all these entrepreneurs that I've turned into entrepreneurs, that their business eventually fails, because it's hard to make a successful business. And, preaching entrepreneurship is a beautiful thing, because if you can pull it off, it's amazing. One of my favorite things is getting to hire people and getting to employ people, and building a culture that is, a fun work environment for them. And I think doing that at scale is a beautiful thing. But it's hard. Entrepreneurship's hard.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes from Gary, he mentions it a lot, is some people are just meant to be the number 5 or meant to be, the number 7 in a company. And it's not a knock on them. They're phenomenal employees,
No.
they're phenomenal workers, but there's just a sense of, knowing what you're good at. And it just kind of goes back to that of just like kind of understanding what your perfect fit is for you in your lifestyle. If you want to go have the clubs after work and be a part of your softball team and your this, that, or the other thing, then you're probably not a entrepreneur that wants to own a company that runs multi-million-dollar business, because you're not going to be able to do all those kinds of things. So it's really about, like, from at least my perspective, the lifestyle that you want to take on, and kind of just the overall understanding that there's going to be probably much, much more than 40 hours in a week taking on a responsibility like you have.
Definitely. I mean, you guys are grinding at 8 p.m. on President's Day. I mean, I was in the office. I would have been here if we weren't doing this podcast. So yeah, it's definitely different. I guess if we want to tie it back to golf too, I mean, self-awareness in golf, I think, is like a huge thing.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Of being able to know, like, I had the yips for a couple years after I kind of gave up golf, and I couldn't say that for 3 years because I didn't want to admit to it. But like, once you admit to it, it's the first step to recovery. But it's like knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. I think golf is actually one of the places where focusing on your weaknesses is a good thing. I think Gary definitely preaches that you should double down on your strengths. I think in business, that makes a lot of sense. I usually think business and golf have a lot of similarities that tie together, but I do think that's the one place where it kind of diverges. Is golf, you should be aware of your weaknesses. And golf is one place I think that if you really grind and put in the time, weaknesses can become at least, marginally good. And your strengths in golf can usually continue to stay there if you practice an adequate amount. So I definitely think self-awareness in golf is a huge thing.
What's going on, guys? I hope you're enjoying this interview with Nathan Scherotter. He does say that focusing on your weaknesses in the golf game is a good thing, and we've got the perfect thing for you. Our friends over at SlopeGrade have the best and most innovative green reading technology on the market right now, available to you at a discounted price only Enjoy the Walk is going to be able to give you. Go to www.slopegrade.com. That's SLOPEGRAIDE.com, and enter Enjoy the Walk at checkout for 10% off. Guys, this software is seriously changing the way we look and read greens. All you need is an iOS software and a belt buckle to tuck it onto. So guys, check them out. They are changing the way we read greens and will help all of your misses and definitely gain you strokes out there on the golf course. We also want to thank our sponsor, Saltwater Swag. She is the woman behind all of this awesome merch we've been able to do so far with Enjoy the Walk. Anything you see on our websites goes through Saltwater Swag. That's at saltwater_swag_MD on Instagram. You can hook up with her on there. You can reach out to her via Facebook at Saltwater Swag MD. Guys, she does vinyl custom decals. She does sweatshirts, sweaters, polos, you name it. If you want something done custom in the world of swag, get it done at Saltwater Swag MD. Now back to the interview. Yeah, you mentioned yips a little bit there, and I had to realize mine a lot quicker than you did. I got yips right in the middle of playing in college golf, so it was
the best time to get them. I'm
luckily
sure.
around some really good teammates who were good ball busters at first, but then we're like, hey man, you're good if you wouldn't 4-putt every other hole. So let's work on this together. So I had a good band of buddies to really help me through my yips, because it was a dark time in my golf game.
The first person to cure yips will make millions and millions of dollars.
Hey, and believe me, when Dante and I were down at the show in Orlando, there's thousands of guys trying. And I think, from a yip perspective, I don't know if our good buddy at Slope Grade is helping that side of golf, but he's definitely helping the green reading side of things. But man, yeah, the yips are a whole nother beast.
I think most people get them in some form at some point in their career, whether it's a small case or a big case. That is up for debate, but it's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Let's get on. I shouldn't have brought that up. Let's get on.
Yeah. So take us through. You played obviously a lot of golf when you were out in Arizona. Take us through the golf life in New York City, or are you living in New York City now? And then what's your practice schedule like? How do you get out and play?
Yeah, so I live in New York City. It's winter time right now, so I do not get out and play in the real sense, but I do go to simulators around the city. There's some 5-iron golfs. There's 2 in the city that have opened up over the past couple of years that are pretty nice to go. Slapstones, which I gave you guys permission to use.
Look for some merch soon, guys.
Yeah, slapping stones. So I slap some stones at 5-iron golf. And then a place just opened up called The Turn, which is actually only a few blocks away from my office. So I get there. They had a league there over the past few weeks, which was fun. And all of those are TrackMan simulators, which is great. When I go to simulators, I mostly just try and get a feel for the swing. I can usually tell if I put a good swing on it or not. I don't always trust simulators. I found that putting total faith in simulators is a bad thing and can screw you up if you go to them too much. So that's been my winter session. Maybe once every other week I go try and slap stones. At simulators, we have Chelsea Piers, which is a terrible driving range, but the only driving range in Manhattan.
Yeah, I wanted your opinion on that, because I had seen on your social media a little bit of some practice out there, and you get your picturesque shots of the sunset with Chelsea Piers, and it's just cool driving range. But I've never been there, and I was always curious. It is as nice as it looks, or is it what's the deal with Chelsea Piers?
It's the only place you can hit golf balls outdoors in Manhattan on the island. Limited flight golf balls. The range extends, I think, 200 and maybe 20 yards. The golf balls are garbage, and it costs like almost $1 a golf ball. So it's incredibly expensive. If you go during a busy time, you might have to wait like 30 minutes to an hour to get a bay. So long story short, I'm not the biggest fan of Chelsea Piers, if you can't tell.
Yeah. So if basically do it for like a bucket list item maybe once and call it a day.
They need a Top Golf New York City then. If you're paying that,
if they turn that into a Top Golf, they would rake in cash. Yeah. It's fine if you want to. It's nice to get an outdoor swing and see your ball in the air. I definitely. Seeing your ball in the air rather than not seeing your ball in the air is a better thing than a simulator, I think, but it's not. It's fine.
So it's here you go. It's it's mid-April, near end of April, pushing May. It's a Wednesday night. You're getting out of work on time or maybe a little bit early. It's maybe 65 degrees out, sun's still up. What do you do?
That sounds like a nice day. Can't wait for that day. I would be fine going to Chelsea Piers with a friend and splitting 50 to 100 golf balls and just getting a few cuts in and leaving. But it's not something that I would regularly do.
Now, when you do have like a full day, now I know those are like few and far between, I'm sure, but full days out on the golf course, what's your number one play near New York? Yeah. Or like, do you call any course home?
Yeah. So I joined a country club last year, but I'm no longer a member. So I bit the bullet, and I'm like, playing golf while living in Manhattan is a very difficult thing. There's very few public courses that are easy to get to. All of them are pretty darn expensive, at least the good ones. Most places take you at least an hour to get to in some way, shape, or form, whether it's training or renting a car. So it's not an easy process whatsoever. I found a golf course that had really great junior rates for memberships called Upper Montclair Country Club out in Clifton, New Jersey. 27 holes, really a great track. They kept it in really premium condition. So I joined there last summer, met a lot of great people. The course was really great, pretty easy to get to for me, but I was so busy. I played like 12 times for the year. And no matter what country club you join, no matter how cheap it is, if you amortize out the cost per round, it's never worth it. Yeah. And so, my philosophy is if you are amortizing out your cost per round, you probably shouldn't join a country club. At least in this kind of tri-state area, because there's so many good clubs and all of them are pretty darn expensive. But I was glad that I did it. Trump Ferry Point is a pretty easy Uber ride away from the city. That's a really great course. Again, the cost per round for a city resident is like $170 to $220. And that's a public course.
That's for a resident? That's in-state resident?
That's in-city, New York City residents. Like, I think twilight rate's probably around 150, 170. Or if you're playing like Saturday morning, it's probably like 220.
Oh my God.
Now I live down in
half a year's membership.
I was going to say, I live down in like Resort Town, USA, in Ocean City, Maryland, or just outside of it. And our premium courses around there, twilight, probably. So I see it from like a resort kind of feel and vibe. I get why that's so expensive. But man, our membership, I could play probably 3 rounds and take care of a full year membership down here with that.
It's supply and demand. Like, there's not a lot of good courses around here from a public standpoint. There's a good group of courses at Crystal Springs, but that you got to rent a car. It takes you probably 50-minute drive to get there, if maybe not longer. They have like Ballyowen, which is an awesome track, but Ballyowen still costs probably $180 around. So there's just not that many good public courses around here, which is, I think, if you talk to a lot of people in this kind of part of town, a lot of them are members at country clubs just because, like, that's the way you play good golf.
Yeah, I was going to say, you almost had to feel like a little bit sense of like relief though when you had that membership, because like you always had a place to go.
100%.
There was always somewhere you could just go play golf, reassured. You had to book a tee time. Like,
exactly.
You were kind of off the hook almost.
Yeah, it was less stress for sure. But, I didn't know many people at the club. I knew like 1 or 2 people. I think one of the great things about golf is playing golf with your buddies. And like getting a group of people where you get a really good game together and saying, hey, we're all playing Saturday morning or Sunday morning. And so it was hard for me just because I met a lot of good people, but it was like the end of the summer and I finally like had my first like game, like regular game. And it was like September because I just wasn't there that much. So, for me, it was like, I'd rather pay a few more bucks for a public round and play with my friends that I know will have a good game. And then trying to convince them every week to join a country club.
Yeah. I think we all love that. That's kind of the thing that we love about having our memberships is the Saturday morning crew or the Sunday morning crew and getting out with your guys. And whether it's, playing in the morning, eating lunch and going out and grabbing drinks and having a nice, like, twilight round or whatever it may be. But that's kind of what we thrive on.
Yeah. That's what I love about my course. I mean, we played yesterday, my group, 24 guys.
That's awesome.
In February, was it February 16th it was?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get that. I mean, it was pushing 50, so it was a nice warmer day, but I mean, it maybe got to 50, maybe, I don't know, for 2 hours out of the entire day. It was roughly in the mid 40s, but still, you guys.
That's a heat wave for the Northeast.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
But that's what I see into it, man. Is if that's what the great part of it is. If you're joining somewhere or if you're just playing golf somewhere, it's just if you have, and for me, for looking at my course, that's what I especially love about it, is there's a great group of guys. You can always play with somebody, and there's always a game going on.
Yeah, I think
you get those two things, it's pretty much a lock.
Definitely. And as long as you like the course, then you're good to go.
Yeah. I got a question for you, Nate. You mentioned that, there's definitely an issue with supply and demand of nice courses up in your area. And obviously empathy is starting to take off and a lot of business deals are done on the golf course. Is empathy at all looking to do any sort of acquisition of a course or perhaps a partnership with something like the PGA Tour or Korn Ferry or, anything within the professional golf realm? Are they looking to move that direction?
Yeah. So I'll correct my statement slightly. There's a ton of supply of really great golf courses in the Northeast. They're just really expensive to get into. So the supply of good public golf or good affordable private golf is few and far between. So we're like 99% of our business is direct to consumers. So we sell it all online. We do have our wholesale license in New York. So we're in like 10 different restaurants in New York. I've been approached by the Korn Ferry Tour to do some sponsorship at events. I got an email, I think, from the Northern Trust tournament to do some sponsorship and pouring there. What I found as a running this business as a business owner is that owned events have been much better than being a part of other people's events. From a brand building standpoint, being able to own the narrative and own the event, while it could cost you more money, it could cost you less money depending how you do it, is a way for the brand messaging to get out there in the way you want it to. As a liquor brand, when we have poured wine at other people's events, no one particularly cares about what they're drinking because it's free booze. And so it's either, can I get a glass of red? Can I get a glass of white? Oh, do you have any beer? I'll take a beer. Oh, I'll take whiskey on the rocks. It's much less about brand. Even if you have signage, it's more about, can I just get my drink?
They're not ordering the empathy wine. They're just ordering the red wine.
The red wine. And the empathy signage is there, and we'll get some good content and some good photos from it. But for the amount of effort and resources needed to go into events, we have found, as of now, that owning our own events has been a better strategy for us. That's not to say that will change over the years, but we're a startup brand. We're fairly bootstrapped. We have to kind of pick and choose how we want to spend our money and our resources. And we just found kind of a return on investment from an owned event being much more powerful than sponsorships.
Now, kind of like to piggyback off of that, we had talked a little bit on before you got here about this new Premier Golf League that's starting up. And I don't know if you've dabbled in any of the news that's been going around. There's been some talk of Tiger being offered somewhere around $250 million, Phil being offered somewhere around $200 million, and the likes of Brooks, DJ, kind of all the stars really being offered these absurd amounts of money for 18 events in a year. That's all this league is looking to play.
Right.
So I'm putting the hypothetical out there to you. If the Premier Golf League comes to Gary Vee and says, "Hey, we need help with your marketing genius on this, but we need to kind of piggyback on some wine."
Right.
Is empathy jumping in there? Would empathy say, "Hey, I think we could work something out"?
We're open to any and all barters for Gary's time and resources. I think he says it's like the $1 million man. Everybody has a price. Politics aside from PGL?
I think that's what they're going with at the moment. It's changed, multiple times since the press release.
Yeah, politics and who the money's from aside. I think if any, we're entrepreneurs. We're always open for business. We're always open for new ideas and potential ways to partner with cool creative brands, whether it's PGL or who else. If the Northern Trust or the Korn Ferry Tour came to us and said, we're going to buy 5,000 cases, but in return, we want XYZ from marketing services and consultations, and they want to launch their own line of Corn Fairy Tour shirts and they don't know how to do it, and can we help with that? Like, we're open for business. If they want to sit down with Gary for 5 hours for a consulting session, like, we rarely say no if it makes sense. We're in the business of yes, but it just has to make sense for both parties.
Sure. And I think, the golf industry, it seems over the last, and I mean, obviously people love to say single-handedly by the hands of Tiger Woods, the golf industry has changed, and which I think there's a lot of merit to that. But I think a lot of these guys coming up in the last 5 to 8 years, whether it's DJ, Brooks, and have kind of stepped up the athleticism to another level. But I'd love to see, from your side of things, you've been in the wine industry for a long time. Like you said, has there been a lot of kind of jump in the industry as far as, from our kind of sides of things? We see a lot of ex-golfers getting into the wine industry. From your side of things, have you seen that like ramp up here in the last 3 to 5 years? As as far as your Greg Normans, I think your is it Kirsty Webb has come out with their own wines, and you see a lot of those ex-pros getting into the wine industry. Is there a lot of market value in that, or is it just kind of people that have a lot of money that just are kind of dabbling in it?
My gut says it's the latter. There's a saying in the wine industry of the way to make a small fortune in the wine business is to start with a big one. So it's a pretty difficult business. It's a cash flow intensive business. You make a product and pay off a product probably a year before you start seeing any revenue for that product. And so from a supply chain management and from a cash flow management, it's a pretty difficult business. So my gut says it either could be a passion project. They could be working with partners who have done this before successfully, that have presented them a business model that can make sense to them. It also can be a status symbol. I think wine is definitely a status symbol. Owning a vineyard and owning land out there is definitely a status symbol. There's definitely worse places to go take some time off than a vineyard. I also think I've thought about this in the past. One of the parallels I see with golf and wine is that you can really never master either of them. There's always something additional that you can learn about wine. There's always something additional you can learn about golf, I think probably until the day you die. So I think that there are some parallels in that world, or in that sense, that is actually kind of fascinating when you kind of look at the psyche of like a golfer and why they may enjoy drinking wine and learning about wine.
I think that's really kind of fascinating to just look back on it and kind of think about, like, because I know I really enjoy drinking wine too, and there's never the same flavor that I feel like two people taste. There's always something, whether it's the smell that one person's getting out of it that the other one's not, or their taste buds are a little different. Like there's always just a little difference in the way wine goes down for anyone. And it's the same. There's no two ways to shoot 72. The same two ways to shoot the same score. There's always different avenues and way to get there. So I love that parallel between the two, because I think it speaks, just kind of the crazy similarities between maybe why so many golfers do end up going down that path from the professional level.
Yeah, the quest for perfection that you'll never find is definitely existent in the golf and the wine world.
Now, kind of stemming from that, we see a lot of products like, I said before, we, in our Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon groups, love to go out and have a couple drinks with our rounds. You're seeing a lot of product change, and I want your opinion on this, honest to God's truth, to a canned perspective. You're starting to see some canned wines out there, and I know you guys being just, shipping to consumers are strictly bottles right now. What's your opinion on the canned wine industry, and do you think it really changes the overall taste or value of a wine?
Yeah, I think that. So we're going to make a canned wine. We're coming out with a canned wine, canned rosé, sparkling canned rosé in May as a limited time offer. We're going to see how it goes. We think it'll go well, and it could become a main staple in our portfolio. I mean, White Claw's changed everything. And I think
Bud Light would make a seltzer.
Right? I just tried one the other day. I think White Claw's a little better. But anyways, of the realm of thinking that the customer is always right. The public isn't always right, but the public likes what they like, right? And so canned seltzer has been a huge trend. It's made other companies rethink their kind of holistic strategy, go-to-market strategy on beverages in general. I think that with millennials, experiences is definitely much more of a thing. You can drink with a can much easier than you can drink from a bottle. Mm-hmm. You can bring it with you a lot of places. It's very easy to transport. Showing up to a party with a 8-pack of canned rosé is much easier than lugging 3 bottles around. So it's definitely a convenience play. From a taste side of things, I don't think that we're ever going to see like super high-end wine put in a can. I think you'll see good juice in there. Mm-hmm. But I think that traditional producers will never put their wine in a can, which is probably a good thing. There's the aging process of wine in a bottle is a real thing. And wine will get better in a bottle. I don't think that it will get better in a can by any means.
Yeah, there's some science to that.
Yeah, there's definitely science behind that. But for me, again, we're entrepreneurs. We're not romantic about at VaynerMedia. We were never romantic about the medium that we were telling the story. We just wanted to be the most efficient storytellers we could be. And if that was creating content for Facebook or Snapchat or Twitter, that's what we would do. We just didn't think that TV was the most efficient place to spend your money. In parallel, for us, if this canned wine takes off, it could be a huge part of our business next year. And we wouldn't say no to that. We would embrace it and try to come up with more product extensions from it. So that's kind of where my head's at a little bit with it. And obviously cans on the golf course is like no one's lugging a bottle of wine to a golf course with them. It'd be ridiculous.
Right. We had to ask because I know,
little straw.
Yeah. Sometimes and it's funny you mentioned it a little bit. Like you said, you weren't held to an idea or, kind of, I think the same similarity that golf has kind of on the opposite side of things to wine is there are a lot of purists out there that are kind of maybe stuck in their ways. And we've talked about it before on the golf side of things that, you look at the distance debate or you look at what you can wear on golf courses or you look at how guys are bringing their little JBL clips out there and everyone's playing music now of our generation. Yeah. Like
what is your opinion on all that stuff and the arm lock putters and like –
I think there's a position to be said that like the USGA just royally screwed up that ruling.
That's true.
And I mean, because you can't say you can anchor at one place but not another. And what's this hovering you got with Webb Simpson and Adam Scott? His career was derailed until he could hover, and now he's back. I mean,
he's a champion.
It's such a gray area with that. And I'll be honest with you, I think you look back at the history of golf. People were anchoring putters way back. I mean, there's pictures and drawings of guys anchoring like wooden sticks to themselves, for God's sake. Like if you can play in a way to get your ball in the hole, I don't think it's an unfair advantage. I think you've just figured something out that works for you. And if you can make equipment, like I'm not saying take a broomstick out there or take Happy Gilmore's, hockey stick putter out there. But I think there's so much leniency in the rules as of now that like people are getting away with stuff. I don't think it's an unfair advantage. You just find out what works for you.
Do you all agree or do you have a debate on this internally?
We're surprisingly, we're kind of all in agreement with a lot of these rule limitations and new, like the distance debate. I don't know if you follow, but we can't stand it. We just think, don't get me.
Don't open that can.
Jeez. But
there's no distance. There's no distance problem with amateur golf.
No,
Number one.
That's who you're trying to protect. And leave it at that.
Our good friend Matt Janella tweeted out a perfect statistic. 98.5% of golfers have zero distance problem. And then the other 2.5%, there's half of that actually hits the ball far enough to even be considered a problem. Like, I mean, you just look at the guys out there on tour. And I mean, I feel like it's split the guys on tour. There's a lot of guys out there on tour that are really championing for this distance drawback for some reason. And I'm not sure what the reason is behind it.
Well, tour average of drives is like what, 290-ish? or something like that. Maybe a little
Yeah,
over
I
that.
think it's just above that, somewhere in that realm.
So yeah, the top players are hitting it, maybe 20 yards past him, which is probably significant at that level. I'm on the same boat as y'all. If you couldn't tell, I think golf is a very difficult sport, and creating rules that make it less easy for the everyday golfer seems like a poor business model.
I think we said the exact same thing. Like my stance on it, and like from where Isaiah and I grew up, like we weren't members at like $100,000 a year country club. We were members at we were at a public course. Hell, I wasn't a member. I worked there to like get my free golf, And it's like we grew up in a place where like if you didn't have a lot of money, you either had to work at a golf course to play there or whatever. And it's like, why are the rules constantly attacking or making the game harder to pick up?
Exactly.
Like you look at soccer and you could just go play on a field with a soccer ball, and that's why it's so internationally like accessible and why it's such a great international game, because it's so easy to play.
Yeah, and I think encouraging innovation is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think companies when they stop innovation and when they make things, again, I think it comes back to consumer centric or player centric in this world. Like you start making things less fun to be a part of, and who wants to have less fun?
USGA and the RNA, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, even going back to the putter, I mean, even a lot of pros have said it, and even coaches, you name it. They said if any type of one style putter, if you were putting one style or a different way, if that one way was
so much better,
yeah, everybody would doing it.
Yeah.
One's, I mean, they're all doing their own separate thing, and that's what's also great about it is the creativity.
Well, it does. It just goes back to the way that, Nate connected wine and golf earlier. There's millions of different ways to go about it and produce wine. I mean, you look at the shelves, there's no one similar wine out there. And you look at the golf course, you look at even the guys on tour, there's no one similar swing out there. They're all doing it differently. And that's the allure about it. That's the draw to it, is there is so many ways to go about it.
100%. I think the individuality of golf and finding, what works best for you is a lifelong journey, but it's something that it brings you back to golf. So I think it's a very beautiful thing in the long run.
Couldn't agree more. Now, I think, we'd be doing our listeners a disservice if we didn't touch on this topic. A lot of our guys that we've talked to and have listened to us pretty loyally, they're not in that warm climate condition. So they're working in the golf industry in places where they maybe have like 7 or 8 months of steady income, steady play. But then they find themselves struggling to maybe compensate for those 3 or 4 months that they don't have play to make their cost. So like maybe what would be a business like position they could take on maybe, getting themselves prepared for that slow time, or what could they do in the slow time to maybe get themselves prepared to weather the storm and get back in form for that, full on season?
Yeah. So, again, I think you got to identify what you're good at. My brain usually goes towards, digital and social, obviously, because that's where I came from. And so, from a storytelling perspective and from a building brand perspective, understanding what you're good at. Some people love being in front of a camera. Some people hate it. Some people are great artists. Some people are terrible. Some people love writing and do a great job with the blog. So I think depending on the position that you're in the golf industry, if you're in a position where you want to build expertise and build brand and build awareness, understanding what medium are you comfortable with, and then just producing content during the off season. Obviously with video, and if you're giving any sort of instruction, it's kind of a little bit more difficult in the off season again, but you can build up a bank of content during season and slowly trickle it out during the off season. What else can I say? I think networking in the off season is probably a very smart thing to do. I think there's probably tons of people that aren't doing as much as they would like to be doing. And so I think networking, it's probably the great time to network and go get a drink with other people in the industry, brainstorm ideas, content series you could produce, businesses you could start based off of insight that you have from who's at your course. I think the cool thing about business, and especially like small business and niche business, is like, if you start something and you're at a course with 400 members, if 200 members become customers because you solved a problem that some of your people at your course have, it's a small little business. That's nice. You know,
Yeah.
Every business doesn't have to be a 10 million, 20, $50 million business. You know, if you get 200 customers that are buying something from you, you know, a couple times a year, it's meaningful money. And so I think identifying different problems at your clubs or in the industry and coming up with niche solutions, whether that's by yourself or with a network of you know, golf professionals around you, is a very interesting thing. I don't know exactly what those ideas are off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's some things out there.
I think that's great advice. You know, I think that just to get the ball rolling is a good start, whether it's looking to, like you said, build a network within your local area or even outside your local area. I think a lot of things can be learned from what guys do, even in the warmer climates like Florida or California or even the Arizona area. They do things during their slow times as well, because every business, every, you know, golf course experiences slow seasons. I think maybe even learning from different regions can facilitate good ideas.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see where the simulator world goes, especially in the Northeast. I think it's been very successful in the city, which is densely populated. I'm curious how that scales to more suburban areas. I do think that there's an opportunity for it, especially during the off season. But again, once the off season's over, it becomes the off season for the simulator.
I'll keep you up to date, because a really place right across from my office in downtown Salisbury. It's a very small. We have like a Division III university and a small little nucleus here, but it's nothing, you know, bustling like Philadelphia or New York City or anything like that. So they just put in 2 simulators above their restaurant. Going to kind of try and treat it like, you know, like you said, a 5-iron golf or something similar to that. More of your bowling style of, you know, kind of laid back, laxed, just go and practice whatever you may be, or hang out with your friends, have some drinks. So I'll keep you up to date on how this one works once the weather gets warm and it's not 35 degrees and everyone's back out on the course.
Yeah, I definitely think for teaching professionals too, if they do have access to a simulator in the off season, you know, reaching out to their clientele or networking with business professionals. You know, people want lessons in the off season. I think it's just, again, more difficult to, like, how do you actually get that done? So reaching out to people that you think would be interested in a lesson, and I'm sure you can find a simulator in the area to kind of book that simulator and make a couple extra bucks. It would probably be a smart thing as well.
Yeah, I think return on investment, I mean, it looks like that kind of technology is getting cheaper and cheaper by the year too. So I think, you know, for any teaching professional, and this just goes back to networking, if you have a couple professionals in your area that are like looking for something to build on and go in on the technology together, it's
100%.
It can be something that leads to fortuitous things that you could even use on a rainy day in the summer too. You know, you get a day that just is a complete washout and no one knows what to do and they want to go golf. Well, I have this simulator now that we can set up somewhere, and all you need is 10-foot ceilings and you're good to rock and roll. So
yeah, put a couple holes in the wall. Why not?
Yeah, it builds character. No, but there's always, if there's a will, there's a way, I think, when it comes down to it. And if you want it bad enough to go find your means of making things work during the slow times, then you can find things to make it work.
Absolutely.
So now, man, that's we really appreciate you joining us. I know, like you said, you are the COO of Empathy Wine, so you are a busy man, and in the office here in the Northeast around 8:45 in the evening. I'm sure you got things to do, so we won't keep you too much longer. But one thing we always like to do and wrap up with all of our guests, kind of put them on the spot, tell us their favorite course, and then tell us your highest and lowest rounds, and maybe a little favorite and worst part about both of those rounds.
I had the privilege to play Shinnecock a few years ago, and so I don't think that I've played a few nice courses in my day, but Shinnecock was like, you walked onto that piece of land and you're like, this is a special place. It was just, you got like goosebumps when like you walked onto that first tee and just saw that piece of land. So that was by far my favorite round. I didn't play that great, but
Yeah, we've heard from multiple people that's a really special property. Our second interview of our whole podcast series, we were lucky enough to have one of Isaiah's very close friends who played in the U.S. Open out there.
Oh, amazing.
And he kind of said the same thing. It feels like a different world, especially in his shoes when he was out there and the stands were up and fans were out and about. He said it was just it was almost like you were just kind of walking on clouds the whole weekend. It was just it's a really special property.
Yeah. What was the other one? Highest and lowest
highest
round?
and lowest round. I hate to do it to you, but we do it with everyone, so I got to stay consistent.
It was, my lowest round was definitely in high school when I peaked professionally. I believe I shot like a 66 a couple times.
Wow. That might be a guess. That might be a guess low. Non-professional.
Okay, got it. I don't think the course. It was like our home course for high school golf. So, yeah, probably 66 ones. I think I had a couple 67s in there. I was usually the golfer though that stayed like right around par. I never went too low. I didn't go too high. I was pretty consistent. Yeah. Those couple rounds were very nice, but my highest round, like, are you talking like high school and beyond? Because I'm sure when I was young, I fired a few hundreds.
I guess competitively, I don't ever think I shot worse than 100. I'm sure I shot in the 90s a couple times. I tried to have short-term memory, as they tell you in golf, and put those out of your head.
You have to.
I definitely remember firing a 92 or 93 for sure. But that was probably like 7th, 8th grade-ish. I'm going to stick with a 92.
We'll let you off the hook. We'll let you at 92.
What is that, 20 over?
Something close, depending on your par. But yeah, it's funny to see because we've looked back on our own high rounds as well, and it seems like it's come from around that time or somewhere a little after junior to senior year of high school was kind of like where we were like, oh wow, we threw a number up there that we never want to see again. But it's funny how much you look back on it like, man, I used to not be able to break 100 or I was a consistent 90s kid and now I'm scratch or something like that. So
yeah, watching my friends get into the game and starting at like being 100 to 110 golfers and like slowly progressing down to like 92 is like a really cool thing to watch, because once they get to 92, they're like, it was like 105 never happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like now I'm getting to 88 and it's like, I think we went through that in our lives at such an early age that we don't even remember it. But now since my friends are getting into the game and seeing like all that, like they won't, in 10 years from now, they'll be like, I don't remember shooting 105. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. It's like, just to kind of wrap it up and bring it back into golf and business, I feel like it's the same thing with like any kind of entrepreneur when they first start out. It's like, their first sale felt like, $1 million, like it meant the world. And then you look back and you build this, base of a couple hundred, sales. And then you build a base of a couple thousand. And then it's like, oh, well, all right. One doesn't have the same effect anymore as like, all right, we just sold like 100 cases and so on and so forth. So it's always fun to see the scaling of things, whether it's someone growing their golf game and getting better all around. And, but I think the end all be all is it takes a while. And that's kind of the similarity in business and golf too, is you can't rush getting better. Like you're not going to take one lesson in golf and all of a sudden go from shooting 95 to shooting 75. There needs to be a well-rounded kind of set of skills that you hone over and over years of practice and getting better to finally become a well-rounded kind of chiseled golfer and a well-rounded chiseled businessman or businesswoman.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. From my end, I think as life goes on and you're in your career more, playing golf more, you have more and more wins and more losses at some level. And I think for me, it's just trying to have a couple more wins than losses at the end of the day. But you gotta enjoy the losses as much as the wins, I guess. Because you have to take something from them.
Well, you must know a guy named Gary V, because he talks very similar to that, and it's tried and true though. It never fails.
Yeah, it's just life, I think everyone loses, everyone hits a bad shot. Most people hit multiple bad shots when they play around. We've hit many bad shots in our winery in the first year, but it's taking those, and as long as you learn from them and you're staying afloat, I mean, sometimes that's all you can ask for.
That is 100% correct. Guys, that is Nathan Scherotter, COO and co-founder of Empathy Wines. Before you go, where can they find you at Empathy Wines to pick up some bottles, and where can they maybe taste test you kind of, locally within the New York area?
Yeah, so empathywines.com, and then we're at Empathy Wines on all the social handles out there. Can I give your guests like a special promo code?
You sure can.
Is that allowed?
Absolutely.
That is most definitely allowed.
Cool. Right after this, I'm going to create Enjoy the Walk as a promo code to get 15% off all of your future Empathy Wines orders. Don't share that publicly. I don't like to discount too much.
That'll be a podcast only. They'll have to get to this point to have that little promo.
Yeah, if they make it to minute 70, they got it, so they deserve it. Yeah, so Enjoy the Walk, 15% off. But if you're in New York City, we are at Catch Steakhouse. We're at American Cut Steakhouse. We're at Seymour's. We're at Queens Yard in the Hudson Yards Mall. We will be in a couple Whitman's locations soon, I hope. And we're at a bar called Boys Don't Cry, I think, which is
Sounds
just a
fun.
recent pickup. So, but if you're also in the New York area and you want to know where we're at, just email me, Nate at Empathy Wines. So I'll send you the list of where we're at, and you can go taste us there.
Awesome. Well, guys, that just about wraps us up here for the Enjoy the Walk podcast. Again, that was Nate Scherotter from Empathy Wines, and we really appreciate you joining us, Nate. I think you gave some really good insight to the kind of similarities between business and golf, and how the folks within the industry can maybe help themselves get through the slow times, and just some awesome insight to wine in general, and kind of your background in the industry. So really appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I had a blast.
Yes, sir. Take care and enjoy the walk.
Thank you.
That's the stuff. One shot at